Hello everyone. Today we will review still another terrible situation with you. 3 years after Suzanne Morphew vanished suddenly on May 10, 2020, her remains were found on September 22, 2023. Breathing fresh life into the historically cold case of Suzanne Morphew's disappearance, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation found her remains during a search of an area in Moffat, Saguache County. First pointing toward the spouse as the most likely suspect in what the police thought to be a murder, was a turbulent personal life and an erratic memory of events. New data, though, questions the 2-year-long campaign. Suzanne's case was worked on by over 70 researchers, spending 1,000 hours. Before the police felt ready to accuse Berry with first-degree murder of his wife, 135 search warrants were issued and hundreds of over 400 people were questioned. Most people agreed Berry was guilty even after the charges were withdrawn due to mismanagement and insufficient proof. But concerns about what happened on the day Suzanne vanished have emerged once her bones were discovered 50 miles beyond their search area, and DNA evidence tied her death to a suspected serial killer. Berry Morphew is significantly more clever than the authorities credit him for. Alternatively, did someone or something from her personal life kill her? Born April 11, 1971, Suzanne Morphew grew up with 2 brothers, David and Andrew, after being born to Jean and Adrian Alexandria. Everyone who knew Suzanne said she was a wonderful, intelligent, and thoughtful friend. Suzanne met her future husband, Berry Morphew, in 1998 while still in high school and married him 6 years after first dating. Signed by the Toronto Blue Jays, Matthew was an outstanding ball player as Suzanne worked on a degree in education at Purdue University. Berry changed courses and started a profession in horticulture, ending his career before it had started following a major accident. Suzanne had been instructing for 4 years when Berry launched his landscape business, which grew steadily as more time went by. The pair produced Mallory and Macy together. Up until Suzanne received a Hodgkin's cancer diagnosis, their life in Indiana was picture perfect. She battled cancer twice. In 2018, the Morphews relocated to Maysville, Colorado, for a fresh start and to be closer to their daughter Mallory, attending Western State University. They relocated to a magnificent 7-acre estate Berry could hunt on. While Suzanne retired from teaching and devoted more of her time to the church and pursued sports, he remained a contractor and even volunteered as a firefighter. One new hobby she was investigating was mountain riding. Though they had their share of issues, all of which would come to light following the events of May 10, 2020, the Morphews were the ideal family from the outside looking in. Starting at the Morphews' house, May 10, 2010, looked very different from most Mother's Day festivities. Berry and the girls were leaving their house, leaving Suzanne alone. Berry said he had a landscaping appointment 3 hours from Maysville in the town of Broomfield. He drove. The females, on the other hand, traveled to camp. Berry and the girls had scheduled nighttime returns home to honor Mother's Day with Suzanne. The intended celebration, nevertheless, never happened. That evening the girls messaged their mother wishing her happy Mother's Day, but they never got a text message in reply. This was strange considering their mother used social media rather actively. Knowing she had to be on her phone, they expected some images from her closest friend's daughter's wedding. Mallory and Macy checked on Suzanne by contacting their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife after few hours of no response. Mrs. Ritter arrived at the Morphews' residence about 4 o'clock and stayed until 4:30 p.m. to come across an empty house. When she called Berry to let him know, he advised her to look for Suzanne's mountain bike. He told her to call the police should it not be there, and she followed his advice exactly. Desperate to find Suzanne's whereabouts and status, Berry Morphew and his 2 kids made their way back home as the police arrived at the Morphew property. Few hours into the hunt, the police discovered their first definite clue. The finding reversed the direction of the research. 2 deputies discovered Suzanne's mountain bike not too far from Murphy's house off a steep hill. Although the site suggested Suzanne might have been in a crash, the bike itself and the surroundings showed no evidence of struggle. There were no skid marks showing she applied bike brakes. Though falling down the side of a ravine, there was no damage to the mountain bike itself, no blood, and the local vegetation hadn't been harmed. The deputies reasoned it was clearly placed there by someone. Berry reacted strangely when they showed him this information. Berry's strange mountain lion notion would be the first of many wild tales, hypotheses, and explanations he would provide the researchers looking for his wife. To put it mildly, many saw Berry's handling of his wife's absence strange. During a covertly filmed interview with YouTuber Tyson Draper, he delved deeper on his mountain lion narrative. Berry also missed the search teams Suzanne's brother Andrew arranged. He questioned Berry's account of the bike trip and speculated that she might have been abducted on May 9th rather than Mother's Day. When Suzanne's helmet was discovered 1 mile from the Morphew's house, in the same direction Berry's truck telemetry indicated he had gone that morning, suspicion finally turned to him. If it wasn't in the exact opposite direction of the Broomfield building site he was scheduled to attend that day, investigators could have passed it off as an unusual coincidence. In the first interview he had with the police, he said he departed straight for Broomfield after waking up from his alarm clock at 4:30 a.m. But according to his Ford F-350 telematic data, he had drove 1 mile west before arriving at the building site. Berry gave a handy justification when faced with the collected data. Earlier that morning, he claimed to have been scouting elk at about 4:30 a.m. curious to find which way they were traveling so he could follow them later. Berry apparently used to calm elk and remove their antlers for selling. He changed his account to say he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 and got up alone when the police pointed out he couldn't have seen the elk at 4:30 if he was supposed to be just waking up. When asked particularly about the day she vanished, he claimed it was among the finest the couple had had in some years. Berry reported that morning he was working with a Salida colleague. He got back early, hiked with Suzanne, then grilled some steak and had private time. As we have shown, Berry is not the most trustworthy witness. He claimed they went to bed together and speculated that might be the last time they saw each other. Berry had lied about almost everything that happened that evening, as the police began looking into him discovered. When the researchers reviewed Berry's phone and car telematic data on May 9, 2020, they immediately sensed something was off. Though Berry and Suzanne Morphew did spend the day and evening together, the circumstances did not fit Berry's story. The first notable departure from Berry's reports emerged at 2.42 to 2.44. His phone records showed random travels over the site. Under interrogation by detectives, he claimed to be probably hunting chipmunks under sedative influence. Berry turned his phone to airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. and left it in that state until 10:17 p.m. Even the steak meal he claimed to have shared with his wife came under question. Instead of 2 dirty dishes, investigators discovered only one. Later that evening, further unusual activity surfaced on the Morphew property. During their examination of the data from later that evening, the authorities found further alarming information. An hour after Berry said he had fallen asleep with his wife, around 9:30 p.m., his automobile turned around and traveled 96 feet backwards from the driveway. If he was guilty, investigators hypothesized this might have been when he carried her body aboard his truck. According to the recordings, the door to his pickup opened and closed over 80 times between 3.25 and 3.48. Though circumstantial, the evidence suggested information Berry was not providing the police, which led to a closer examination of May 10th occurrences. Berry was not meant to be in Broomfield that day, according to interviews with colleagues. Their contract didn't start until a week later, hence no project to check was underway. Berry claims he only stopped at McDonald's to clear his windshield, the employment site, the Holiday Inn, a nearby grocery shop for water and oats, but Colorado Bureau of Investigation's collected CCTV evidence ran counter to his story. Berry was seen throwing 5 garbage bags beside McDonald's and the Holiday Inn. When shown the tape, Berry gave a strange justification for his disposal approach. He said he wanted to clean his automobile without paying appropriate disposal costs. Berry's narrative fell apart, of course, when police looked over his automobile. A colleague reportedly claimed Berry's hotel room smelled strongly of bleach and chlorine a day after Suzanne vanished. Investigators also found Berry changed his clothes several times during the day. Although Berry's acts would seem to be destructive, detectives found no reason. That changed as they dug more into their personal affairs. The daughter of Berry and Suzanne stated that neither of them quite felt as content as Berry would have the police think. It confirmed the text messages they came upon when retrieving Suzanne's phone and personal items from the house. One would understate it to suggest they were having marital issues. She spoke bitterly about the marriage and discussed how her husband would not even entertain divorce. She recorded a list of complaints in her notes app that show a trend of physical violence. Suzanne even said she felt terrified to be in a room with him alone. She was worried about his drinking, frequent efforts to get her phone, and even suspected he was cheating on her. Suzanne had bought a pen to capture her husband in the act, and when the police stormed the Morphew house on May 20th, they found it. Ironically, it noted her affair, not his. Suzanne attended high school with a man called Jeff, her lover. Starting about 2018, the affair reportedly lasted 1.5 years. Jeff sounded like a definite suspect, yet the cops found him not involved at all. Investigators thought Berry discovered the affair somehow, and a note Suzanne penned 2 days before her disappearance confirmed their belief. Berry had accused her of dating another man. Though crucial, the spy pen was not the only piece of essential information they came upon looking for the Morphew house. They discovered in the family's dryer a cap of a tranquilizer dart, a spent bullet casing in the bedroom, a sizable break in the doorframe, and what they thought to be Suzanne's journal leftovers in the fireplace. Together with the telematic data, all of these results pointed to Berry perhaps having plotted the murder of his wife and killed her sometime in the afternoon of May 9, 2020. Suzanne's phone records confirmed that narrative. She never used it again, after texting her lover 53 times and forwarding a selfie at roughly 2:10 p.m. Until 2 weeks later, when the police conducted a 2-day excavation of a Salida construction site, one of Berry's job sites, the public was unaware that Berry was a suspect in her abduction. Berry responded by publicly releasing a strange video claiming his innocence. Not detained until May 5, 2021, over a year after the inquiry started, Berry Morphew was. Although the evidence against Berry was circumstantial at best, the prosecution looked sure in their case given the shifting narratives, frequent lying, and obvious purpose. Berry was accused of first-degree murder of his wife, changing physical evidence, carrying a dangerous weapon, and trying to influence a public official. As if all that was not sufficient, Berry later on was charged for submitting a false election ballot under Suzanne's name. He asserted he didn't know it was illegal and that Trump might use the additional vote. Berry paid a $600 fine and admitted a guilt on the offense. Most of the evidence on Berry Morphew's case became public knowledge in August 2021, when a preliminary hearing decided whether or not his case would go to trial. The prosecution gradually presented the evidence they had acquired over 4 days, then speculated on what might have transpired. On May 9, 2020, Berry killed his wife. She was taken apart in a hotel room, her tools were disposed of, and her body was buried in an unmarked cemetery. But Berry's defense aggressively challenged the prosecution's narrative, pointing up flaws. They pointed to Berry's car and the hotel room he allegedly carried her body from, but cadaver dogs can uncover no evidence of human remains. They also hinted to the possibility of a planted dart bullet cover. The images shot of the dryer showed apparent discrepancies. One revealed the cap was in the dryer, while another said it was not. The defense further claimed that Berry could not have utilized his dart pistol to assist in the claimed murder, as it was broken at the time. None of the fragmentary DNA the defense team found in Suzanne's Range Rover or on her cycle helmet matched Berry, though this was their smoking gun. The fact that the DNA discovered in her automobile matched those of 3 unresolved sexual assault cases conducted in Chicago and Arizona created reasonable doubt, thereby making the discovery such a major event. Why was this not raised earlier? Before he could pursue the lead, the CBI inspector gathering the proof took military leave. To exacerbate the situation, the defense was never told the foreign DNA matches even existed. During that hearing, they were learning about it for the first time. Hence, the prosecution suppressed exculpatory evidence that may have helped the defense. The defense said throughout the case that the prosecution lacked sufficient proof to show Berry should be found guilty of killing his wife, given another defendant with a criminal record existed. Though unusually, he postponed his ruling. Noting the hundreds of man-hours and resources invested in the case, they requested the court to decide fast on his choice. The judge ruled the matter will proceed and set Berry's bail at $500,000 only on September 7th. On September 20, 2021, Berry left county jail carrying his daughters. The prosecution moved to dismiss all allegations against Berry without regard 9 days before the trial was scheduled to start. This implies, given fresh information, the prosecution is able to reopen the case at any moment. It would have been difficult without a body of reasonable doubt on Berry's murder and misbehavior on behalf of the prosecution. The prosecution also failed multiple deadlines, which resulted in penalties excluding 14 important witnesses from the trial. News of the discharge stunned the world, as Berry could be seen leaving the courtroom grinning broadly and carrying his 2 daughters with him. Following an inquiry, a team of researchers unearthed 7 shallow graves found in Moffett, Colorado, on September 22, 2023. Using dental data and chemotherapeutic port over 50 miles from the expected search area, the mountains encircling Berry's property, Suzanne's bones were found. People wonder if Berry might still be technically regarded as a suspect in the murder, once her body was discovered, given the police know Berry's vehicle wasn't in Moffett on the 9th and 10th of May. Berry may have made the trek to Moffett to bury her dead and head back, and some have noted that he could have had assistance in getting her body thrown away. Maybe they could link him to where Suzanne's remains were found if they received a subpoena for his phone and automobile data for an extended length of time. Berry looks to be in clear right now, though. The police and district attorney's office have not yet thrown on the towel, though. Although she would not be able to comment until more information is available, the district attorney of the 12th Judicial District informed CNN that the case is still under investigation, and they sent their sympathies to Suzanne's family. Berry's attorney, Iris H.N., has been quite outspoken since the body was uncovered, suggesting that since Suzanne's remains were found in a boneyard, she most certainly fell among the several victims of a serial killer. She thinks Berry was unfairly singled out by police, and hopes they would finally own their mistakes. Claiming he was unfairly charged with the abduction and death of his wife, Berry has started a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff's officers, and several investigators in the meantime.